Hello, dear colleagues. My name is Rodion Sevastyanov. I is one of the authors of the articles which we want to present to you on the theme of modified assessment methodology, ESG competitiveness of enterprises to a new generation of investors. Now I show you the presentation. Please. In the first slide, you can see the name of our publication and the name of authors. It's Alla, Tkachenko, Nataliia, Levchenko, Tetiana, Pozhuieva, Rodion, Sevastyanov, and Sergey, Levchenko. It is relevant to access business competitiveness in the context of accelerated global ESG integration. We take into account the requirements of the European Union taxonomy regulation, the CSRD, and stakeholder requests for information support for accessing ESG risks and ESG competitiveness of enterprises. And the author's methodology for integral assessment of ESG competitiveness of metallurgical enterprises is based on the synthesis of integral and reference approaches to accessing the homeostasis of competitiveness. On the slide number 2, you can see the set of indicators for accessing the ESG competitiveness of metallurgical enterprises. We propose 3 types of indicators. It's partial indicators of the E component of ESG indicator, partial indicators of the S component of the ESG indicator, and partial indicators of G component of the ESG indicator. Indicators of immunity or homeostasis of ESG competitiveness of enterprises are indicators of statics. However, for management decision making and strategizing dynamics, indicators are currently more important. Therefore, it is important to access the vulnerability of ESG competitiveness immunity under the influence of ESG risks and threats. The authors consider it expedient to this by rating them according to the scale of presented on the table on the slide number 3. Here you can see the scale for setting the intensity of threats to the ESG competitiveness of metallurgical enterprises from decarbonization pressure. The frequency of reviewing the limits of optimality of ESG competitiveness of ESG competitiveness and the thresholds of the 3 indicators should be specified in the standards for accessing and rating the ESG competitiveness of enterprises. To confirm the viability of the proposed methodology for accessing the ESG competitiveness of enterprises, we applied it to the assessment of the competitiveness of ArcelorMittal Steel Group enterprises, as you can see on the table number 4. You can see the indicators of ESG competitiveness of such enterprises as ArcelorMittal Steel Kryvyi Rih, Ukraine, ArcelorMittal Tubarão, Brazil, ArcelorMittal Asturias, Spain, ArcelorMittal Bremen, Germany, ArcelorMittal Luxembourg, and ArcelorMittal Asinder, Argentina. And The existing methodology for forming information support for accessing ESG competitiveness creates a certain limitation in access to information on compliance with ESG principles by enterprises. To model the level of ESG competitiveness of metallurgical enterprises, a set of indicators sufficient for calculation was selected. The table you can see on the slide number 5, and within the framework of the proposed simulation model of the limits of optimality and ESG competitiveness of enterprises. And you can see on the figure number 6. It is necessary to establish the compliance of each enterprise with the ESG competitiveness zones. For the defined thresholds on the table, the following zones of ESG competitiveness are defined for each of the indicators. The first zone of insufficient ESG competitiveness. The second zone of conditionally low ESG competitiveness. 3. It's a zone of optimal ESG competitiveness, and 4, zone of conditionally high ESG competitiveness, and 5, zone of critical ESG competitiveness. On the slide number 7, you can see the threshold values of the integrated ESG indicator and its components. And the results of the analysis, we can say that ArcelorMittal Bremen, Germany, and ArcelorMittal Asturias, Spain, are in the optimal ESG competitiveness zone. This characterizes them as the companies with ESG risks that are practically close to zero. ArcelorMittal Asindar, Argentina, and ArcelorMittal Luxembourg and ArcelorMittal Tubarão, Brazil, are in the zone of conditional low ESG competitiveness. This confirms that ESG investments can be accompanied by ESG risks. Only ArcelorMittal Kryvyi Rih, Ukraine, is in the zone of insufficient low ESG competitiveness among the studied metallurgical enterprises. Its ESG investments are the most risky. And the proposed mathematical model is in the article is adequate to the statistical data. It can be used to diagnose ESG competitiveness, and the regression level surfaces are, as a result of this model, are shown on the slide number 8. And this result of this regression you can see in the level of 2021 year. The forecast of the ESG competitiveness indicator of ArcelorMittal Kryvyi Rih in 2050 year is shown on the slide number 9. And you can see the scenario 1, basic scenario, and scenario 2, the optimistic scenario. It was found that subject to an increase of in ESG investment, ArcelorMittal Kryvyi Rih will be able to enter the zone of conditionally low ESG competitiveness under the baseline scenario. In the case of the optimistic scenario, the company may get into the zone of optimality. The threshold values of the limits of optimality of the integrated indicator of ESG competitiveness of metallurgical enterprises and its component, its components are determined in the article. This made it possible to form a simulation model of the optimality limits, which should become the fundamental basis for making decisions on ESG investments in metallurgical enterprises. There are some conclusions of our article that, in general, our article proposes a methodology for an integrated assessment of ESG competitiveness of metallurgical enterprises, and this methodology is based on the synthesis of the integral and reference approaches to assessing the homeostasis of competitiveness. And the main result of our article, you can see, is our forecast for scenario, and we can see the second scenario, optimistic for ArcelorMittal Kverik. It can be realized in the future. Thank you very much for your attention. Goodbye.